Just when you think you've seen it all, Magnus comes up with something. He's playing the white pieces here, hailing from Goatland. He's a Grandmeester, and his opponent is Evgeny Egorov. Playing with black, international Meester, yes, but we get a great game on our hands here. Is he going to end up with egg on his face at the hands of Magnus? Let's find out. It's Titillating Tuesday. Online chess, Blitz chess, the greatest tournament in the world. 2nd of July, late edition. Magnus kicks off with pawn d4. We get d5 in response, and now is there any harm on playing a queen's gambit? Magnus does it better than everybody else, and these are some of the most common moves for black in response. But do we see any of them? No. Evgeny goes for knight to c6 here, charging forward with a Chigorin defense, and these are some of the most common responses for white. Does Magnus do any of them? No. He plays the 8th most popular move, only seen in 4 other games in the Chess.com database, loses 75% of the time. Pawn to e4. Gimme those pawns, says Evgeny. He does it with a gobble gobble. Why is Magnus just giving material? Well, this is his point here. He wants to kick the steed. He does so. It lands on e5, and now he develops the queen early into the game. Usually a no-no. Get your bits out, right? Don't leave them stuck at home. But this is Magnus's point. After the knight retreats, he can pick up the pawn. Does he do it straight away though? Hell no. He goes back to one of his old tried and tested favourites and plows down the board with the h-pawn. What an opening system. Give it a go yourself. Now we get e5. Excellent response. If you're being hit on the flank, counter in the centre. Of course we want to capture en passant. Bellow it in our best French accent. But then you Botez gambit your queen. Not ideal. So Magnus instead picks up the pawn. Material restored here, but knight f6. The knight's charging, developing with tempo. Evgeny doing it with a whinny and a bray as he goes down the board. We get bishop c5, very aggressive, and h5 from Magnus. He's just yelling charge. This knight's on a tour around the world. What are you doing back here? Says mum and dad. Get back out there. Make something of yourself. Magnus continues with pawn to h6. Absolute cannonball. g6 now played. Swiss cheese on the dark squares. And after knight c3, castles, yes, the king gets to safety, but that one's sitting uncomfortable. It's like trying to calculate long lines when a wasp has flown into the tournament hall and got itself lodged in your mouth. Now we see bishop g5. Magnus trying to make the most of the dark squared weaknesses, and this is the funny thing about these systems. Yes, black is better, but only if you now go knight g4 and start targeting f2. Not obvious, because then f3 can come, but not played, missed. Instead we see knight f5, bang, evaluation switches. Suddenly white's doing well here. This knight looks amazing, hard to understand, but you've opened up a big pin. It's uncomfortable. Knight e4 could be coming. So castle's queenside, first played by Magnus, good move, and now the best moves for black are bishop e7 or queen d6. Doing something about this monster pin, but none of it is played. Evgeny stands up, yells YOLO, and pushes forward with pawn to b5. One onlooker falls off his chair. It's so unreal. This is not a good move. Why? Because yes, you're ripping open lines, but Magnus gets this huge initiative now. Surely you take the pawn, right? Well, playable, but not so great. a6 comes, big attack on the way. So instead, Magnus just develops, best move, going after e5, and now black misses to go b4. Best. Yes, you drive the knight into e4. This is one sample line and lose a pawn, but at least you get these ones rumbling. Black with some play too in compensation for white's central initiative, but not played. We didn't see b4. Instead you get b takes on c4 here. Opening the b file looks logical, but how many pieces does Magnus now have rumbling into the attack? He starts with knight takes on e5. We get knight d4 in response, going after the queen on c2, but does Magnus care? Is he going to meekly move that one? No, he isn't. What a move he comes up with. What's the rook worth? 5. He now chops off a knight, worth 3. He whispers, keep the change. This bishop recaptures, and this is his point. Magnus has pulled out his knife and fork. He's chowing down on the queen or the bishop, so you have to go for counterplay. Evgeny plays bishop f5. It's a great move, trying to bamboozle Magnus here. If in doubt, go for some tricks, or better yet, just stand up and dance. Queen d1 now played, getting out the way. Not the most precise, because now, after bishop takes on c3, you're not in the place of queen d2, ready to recapture on c3. So instead, Magnus takes the queen, fine, still better, but after rook b8 here, he's got some problems to solve. There's pressure on b2, but if you capture the bishop, which you want to play, then the rook chops down. King moves, and you don't even take the queen straight away. Knight e4 check, much stronger. One sample line. If the king comes to e1, you pick up the bishop, the queen's still dropping in just a moment, black emerges better. So that is the problem with capturing here. Therefore, what do? You have to do something about this pressure, so Magnus plays the only defensive move to keep advantage, pawn to b3. It's given the double exclam because you're leaving this knight hanging. Now we see c takes on b3, pawn recaptures necessary, and taking the knight off best, but not played. Knight e4 gone for instead. It's still tricky. We see knight c6 in response, rook under fire, and now takes on f2, had to be tried. Hit the queen, hit the rook. The queen's only got one square. You can check from here. In this line, you actually pick up the white queen, although white still has a ton of extra material, winning the game. But that was trickier. Not played. Instead, we see takes on g5. Does Magnus even pick up the rook? No. He starts with a check. This bishop then drops, his king now safer, and queen c2 facilitated. Double attack, bishop d4. You can take on f5 straight away, but Magnus sadistic, twisting the knife. He first goes f3, stopping some knight jumps presumably, holding a pawn, okay, not so important, and now after this rook activates, we see rook h4, using the fact that the pawn moved earlier on, hitting the bishop. Is it saved? No, we get a check. Driving the king to d2. Now the second rook is covered, and after Magnus takes here, black takes here. This is the point, but now the f5 pawn drops, and look at the number of threats in the air. You can't even go knight e6, cover g7, the pawn takes away the square, so we see check, the second rook cutting the e-file, king d3 therefore, and now what to do? King g8 is best to run away from the mate, but rook g2 played, leads to a mate in 2. Can you find the move if I give 10,000 seconds? Okay, maybe gave a bit long there. Very well done if you found this move of queen f6 check. King g8 the follow-up, and this is how you do the checkmate. That's a lollies, mate. Magnus delivers it. These were the final results of the tournament, though. He didn't have his best performance. Hikaru streams home. What a guy. Keeps winning title Tuesday. And these were the other results underneath. I'll have to get to the Gotham and Hans game soon. What a classic that was. Do smash subscribe if you haven't already. Become a Grandmaster soon. Results may vary. Thanks very much for watching, and check out the video on screen for another epic game. Cheers.